I still remember the look on Chloe's face when the screen behind her went black. 1 second, she was basking in applause, presenting my stolen project to a room full of investors. The next security footage of her breaking into my apartment filled the enormous display. Her fingers caught in perfect HD clarity copying files from my laptop, deleting my backups. The timestamp glowed in the corner, December 18th, 2:47 a.m. The room at my father's house went silent. 70 people dressed in their Christmas finest frozen mid-clap. My sister's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Then came the audio crystal clear through the surround sound system. My stepmother, Tina's voice recorded just 3 days earlier. The insurance money from your mother, I forged the signatures. Every penny went to Chloe's future. You were just a burden. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I got here to this moment where I finally burned down the stage they'd built on my back. If you're watching this because you've ever felt invisible in your own family, ever been the one who gave everything and got nothing back, stay with me. This story gets darker before it gets lighter. Hit that like button if you've ever been underestimated. Subscribe because you're about to see what happens when the quiet one finally speaks. And comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to choose between family and your own survival? Because that's exactly where my story begins. Let me take you back to where it really started. 28 years old, living in a studio apartment in Brooklyn that cost more than it was worth, working 16-hour days to build something that would never have my name on it. That was me. Eleanor Moore, the invisible architect of someone else's empire. My mornings started at 5. Not because I was some wellness guru who loved sunrise yoga, but because that was the only time I could work in peace before the rest of the world woke up and started demanding pieces of me. I'd make coffee in the same chipped mug I'd had since college, the one that said Cornell Engineering in faded red letters. It was one of the few things I'd kept from the before times when my mother was still alive and my father still looked at me like I mattered. The walk to Northline Media took 45 minutes by subway. I could have taken a car, should have taken a car given what I actually earned from the company. But that would have raised questions. Questions I couldn't afford to answer. So, I rode the F train with everyone else, my worn canvas messenger bag pressed against my chest, containing everything that made Daniel Chen's company worth $50 million. Daniel. I should tell you about him. He was 31, Stanford MBA, second-generation Chinese-American, with the kind of easy confidence that came from parents who'd actually supported their children's dreams. We'd met 5 years ago at a tech conference where I'd been presenting a paper on predictive algorithms for media consumption. He'd approached me after eyes bright with possibility. What you've built, he'd said, could change everything. Have you thought about going commercial? I hadn't. I'd been too busy trying to survive my PhD program while sending money home to a father who never said thank you and a stepsister who treated me like the help. But Daniel saw something. He saw me when no one else did. He offered me a partnership, equal shares, my name on the door. I'd said yes without thinking twice. That was before I understood what it would cost. You see, success has a funny way of attracting the wrong kind of attention. When Northline Media started taking off, when our algorithm became the thing, every streaming platform wanted my family suddenly remembered I existed. My father called. First time in 8 months. He didn't ask how I was. He asked how much I was making. I made the mistake of being honest. I told him about the company, about the contracts, about the future we were building. I thought maybe, finally, he'd be proud. Instead, he told Tina. Tina told Chloe. And Chloe, my younger sister by 13 months, saw an opportunity. She showed up at Northline Media on a Tuesday morning in October. I was in the middle of debugging code for what would become the Titan project, our biggest contract yet, a $10 million deal with a tech giant that would put us on the map permanently. I heard her before I saw her. That laugh, high and performative, the one she used when she wanted people to look at her. Daniel Chen. Her voice carried across the open office. I'm Chloe Moore, Eleanor's sister. I've heard so much about this place. I'm actually looking for opportunities in media consulting, and I thought, who better to learn from than my brilliant sister's company? I watched from my desk in the back corner, the one tucked behind the server room, where I could work without interruption. Daniel was charming, gracious, offering her coffee and asking about her background. What background I wanted to shout. She'd bounced from one marketing internship to another, getting fired from each one for either incompetence or attitude, usually both. But I didn't shout. I smiled when she waved at me. I nodded when Daniel suggested she come in as a consultant on a small project. I told myself it would be fine that she'd get bored and leave like she always did. I was so stupid. Chloe didn't leave. She embedded herself into Northline Media like a tick sucking resources and taking credit. She'd swoop into meetings I'd prepared for armed with talking points I'd left in shared documents and present them as her own insights. She'd interrupt my presentations to add information I'd literally just said, as if restating my words in a chirpier voice made them hers. And people loved her. That was the worst part. She had the charisma I'd never developed, the social ease that came from growing up as the favourite. While I'd been studying, she'd been learning how to work a room. While I'd been building actual skills, she'd been perfecting the appearance of competence. Daniel, to his credit, saw through it. In private, he'd apologise. I know she's difficult, he'd say, but she's bringing in client relationships. The investors like her energy. What he meant was, she's prettier, more palatable, less threatening than you. She makes people comfortable in a way your competence doesn't. So I kept my head down. I kept coding, kept designing, kept building. I wore my armour of oversized sweaters and thick-framed glasses, the costume of someone who didn't want to be noticed. At the office, I was Eleanor, the awkward freelance developer. At home alone in my apartment, I was the woman who ran a multi-million-dollar company from the shadows. The bifurcation was exhausting. Some mornings I'd stand in front of my closet, looking at the tailored suits I wore for video calls with investors, then at the thrift store cardigans I wore to maintain my cover, and I'd feel this surge of rage so intense I had to sit down and breathe through it. But I told myself it was temporary. Just until we closed Titan. Just until the company was stable enough that I could step out of the shadows without my family destroying everything. Because that's what they do. I knew it in my bones. My father had made that clear enough on Thanksgiving. I'd made the mistake of going home of thinking maybe this year would be different. The house in Westchester, the one my mother's life insurance had paid off, was decorated like a magazine spread. Tina had always been good at spending money she hadn't earned. Chloe held court in the living room, showing off her new designer handbag to cousins, who oohed and ahed appropriately. "A gift from a client," she said, tossing her hair. "You know, for consulting on their rebranding, I'm really making a name for myself in the industry. I was in the kitchen as usual, helping prepare food no one would thank me for." My father came in, poured himself 3 fingers of scotch, and finally acknowledged my presence. "Chloe tells me you're working with her at some tech company." Not my company. Not the thing I'd built. Some tech company where I worked with Chloe as if she were the star and I the supporting cast. "Yes," I said, focusing on the potatoes I was mashing. "It's going well." "She's worried about you." He took a long drink. "Says you're not pulling your weight. That Daniel might let you go." The potato masher bent in my grip. "Is that what she said?" "She's trying to help you, Elena. The least you could do is show some gratitude. After everything we've done for you, everything they'd done for me, like raising me after my mother died, the bare minimum of parental obligation, like using my mother's life insurance money to fund Chloe's lifestyle, like making me feel unwelcome in my own family home. I didn't say any of this. I mashed the potatoes until they were smooth and perfect, added butter and cream and brought them to the table, where Chloe praised them loudly before taking a single bite and pushing her plate away. That was November. December started with a disaster. I was working late at the office as usual, putting the final touches on the Titan presentation. The project was my masterpiece. 18 months of work, an algorithm so sophisticated it could predict content trends 6 months out with 94% accuracy. It was the kind of innovation that would make Northline Media indispensable. It was my legacy. I saved everything to my encrypted laptop, backed it up to a secure cloud server with authentication protocols I designed myself, and headed home around midnight. The subway was nearly empty, just me and a few night shift workers heading to parts of the city that never slept. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I knew something was wrong the moment I opened the door. Nothing looked disturbed, but there was a feeling, that animal instinct, that someone had been in your space. I went to my desk, checked my laptop. It was exactly where I'd left it, but the angle was wrong, just slightly off. I opened it up, typed in my password. Everything seemed normal. Then I checked the access logs, something I did religiously because paranoia was the price of building something valuable. Someone had been in my system. At 2:47 a.m. the previous night, while I'd been in a deep sleep after working 20 hours straight, someone had bypassed my encryption, accessed the Titan files, copied everything, and then erased the originals and the backups. Not just copied, erased. Deleted so thoroughly that even my recovery protocols couldn't find traces. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They knew how I organised my files, where I kept my backups, what mattered most. There was only one person who could have known all of that, who had a spare key to my apartment because I'd stupidly given it to her last month when she claimed she needed a place to crash after a bad date, who I'd shown my filing system to once casually, while explaining how I kept projects organised. Chloe. I sat in the dark for 3 hours, my laptop screen glowing in front of me, feeling something I'd never quite felt before. Not anger, not betrayal, something colder. Something that settled in my chest like ice and didn't melt. She hadn't just stolen my work. She'd tried to erase me completely, to take my future and leave me with nothing, not even the proof that I'd created something extraordinary. But she'd made one mistake. She didn't know that I had one more backup, something I kept on a physical drive in a safety deposit box for exactly this kind of catastrophe. It was 2 weeks old, missing the final refinements, but it was enough. And she didn't know that my laptop had a keylogger I'd installed months ago, not because I suspected her specifically, but because I suspected everyone. Trust no one, that was the first rule of building something valuable. The keylogger had recorded everything. Every keystroke she'd made while sitting at my desk, violating my space, stealing my life's work. I had her, but I didn't move. Not yet. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. Chloe was already there in the conference room practicing her presentation. My presentation. She'd changed a few words, shuffled some slides around, but it was mine. Every insight, every projection, every elegant solution to impossible problems. She saw me walk past, smiled that bright, empty smile. "Morning, Eleanor. Can you grab me a coffee? I'm swamped with prep for this huge presentation." I grabbed her coffee. 2 sugars oat milk, exactly how she liked it. I even remembered to get it extra hot the way she preferred. "You're a lifesaver," she said, not looking up from the laptop. My laptop, the one I'd reported stolen to Daniel that morning. The one he'd replaced without question because he trusted me. I watched her work, adding my insights to her presentation, and I thought about wasps. Did you know that some species of wasps are parasitic? They lay their eggs inside living hosts. The larvae eat the host from the inside out, keeping it alive as long as possible to maximize their own growth. By the time the host realizes what's happening, it's already been hollowed out. That's what Chloe had been doing, not just to me, but to everyone around her. Living off our work, our ideas, our generosity growing fat while we weakened. Not anymore. Over the next 2 weeks, I let her think she'd won. I played my part perfectly, the frumpy older sister, who was just grateful to have a job, who took notes in meetings, while Chloe took credit, who stayed late to fix her mistakes so she'd look good. But in the background, I was building something else, a trap so complete, so perfectly calibrated that there would be no escape. First, I installed monitoring software on her work computer. Legal, since it was company property and Daniel had given me full administrative access. I watched her steal more ideas, saw her badmouth me in messages to investors, observed her creating fake consulting invoices to funnel company money into her own accounts. That was the key. The theft of intellectual property might have been arguable in court. People steal ideas all the time. But financial fraud? That was prison time. Then I went after Tina. My stepmother had always been sloppy, too confident in her own cleverness. She'd forged documents to access my mother's trust fund money that was supposed to come to me when I turned 25. I'd been too destroyed by grief to notice when it didn't appear. Too trusting to question my father when he said the money had been used for family expenses. It took me 3 days to get the bank records, another 2 to find the forged signatures. She'd taken $473,000 over 5 years, every penny that my mother had left to ensure I'd have a future. I sat in the bank's archive room looking at my mother's real signature next to Tina's forgery, and I cried. Not sad tears, angry tears, the kind that burn on the way out. They'd stolen my work, they'd stolen my money, they'd stolen years of my life, making me feel small and worthless and grateful for scraps from their table. I was going to take everything. The plan came together piece by piece. Daniel didn't take much convincing. When I showed him the evidence of Chloe's fraud, the fake consulting fees, the embezzlement, his face went white. I trusted her, he said. I thought she was bringing in real client relationships. She was bringing in my relationships, I told him, using access I gave her. This is on me too. But he shook his head. This is on her. What do you want to do? What did I want? I wanted to humiliate them. I wanted to destroy them the way they tried to destroy me. I wanted them to feel what it's like to have everything ripped away in front of an audience. So I planned a party. Christmas was 3 weeks away. Chloe had been pressuring Daniel to host a company holiday event, something big enough to impress investors. She wanted to present Titan herself to cement her position as the company's rising star. Let's do it at my father's house, she'd suggested in a meeting I'd pretended not to be part of. It's huge, super impressive. We can make it a real event. Investors, clients, everyone who matters. Daniel looked at me. I nodded slightly. Perfect. The invitations went out, but Daniel's list included a few people Chloe didn't know about. Marcus Weinstein, our corporate attorney who specialized in intellectual property theft. Sarah Chen, a detective in the Economic Crimes Unit, who owed Daniel a favor. Several board members who'd been quietly concerned about irregularities in Chloe's consulting fees. And me. The invitation said I was invited as family asked to help serve at the party. Chloe had insisted. She wanted me there in a server's uniform carrying trays of canapés while she played queen. I said yes. God help me, I said yes with a smile. The week before the party, my father called, not to wish me Merry Christmas, to demand $5,000. Chloe needs it for a gift for a major client. It's an investment in her career. Your career too, since you're benefiting from her success at that company. I was in my apartment, looking out at the Brooklyn skyline, thinking about all the times I'd sent money home. All the times I'd sacrificed to support a family that had never supported me. No, I said. What? I said no, I'm not giving you money. The explosion was immediate. He wasn't used to hearing that word from me. He called me selfish, ungrateful, a burden. He said my mother would be ashamed. I hung up. He called back. I didn't answer. He called 17 more times. I blocked his number. Tina showed up at my apartment 2 days later. She had a key, the one my father had kept from when I'd lived at home. I'd never asked for it back, another stupid mistake. I was home, thank God. I heard the door open and came out of my bedroom to find her standing in my kitchen, looking around at my small space with obvious disdain. You've gotten proud, she said, living in your little Brooklyn hovel, pretending you're too good for family. Get out. Your father needs that money. Chloe needs it. After everything we've done for you, you owe us. I don't owe you anything. That's when she slapped me. Hard enough that I tasted blood from my split lip. Hard enough that my glasses went flying. Everything you have, we gave you. The roof over your head after your mother died. The food in your mouth. College tuition we didn't have to pay, you ungrateful bitch. I stood there, face throbbing, and looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd moved into my mother's house, slept in my mother's bed, spent my mother's money, and now wanted me to thank her for it. I walked to my desk, pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app, the one that had been recording since I'd heard her key in my lock. Say that again, I said quietly. About the money. about my mother's insurance. She realized too late what she'd done, but pride made her double down. Yes, I used it. Your mother's precious insurance money. It paid for everything. Chloe's education, her lifestyle, this house. You think your father could afford any of that on his salary? You were just a burden. That money was wasted on you. I made sure it went somewhere useful. You forged documents to access a trust fund that wasn't yours. I did what was necessary for this family. I saved the recording, backed it up to 3 different cloud services, and then played it back for her. Her face went grey. You can't. That's illegal. You can't record someone without their permission. Actually, in New York, only one party needs to consent to a recording. That would be me. This, on the other hand, what you did, forgery, theft, fraud. That's very illegal. Federal prison, illegal. She tried to grab my phone. I stepped back, let her lunge into empty air. She was crying now, makeup running, showing her age in the harsh afternoon light. Please, Eleanor, please, I'm family. You're or nothing to me. Get out of my apartment. Get out now, or I call the police right now instead of waiting until Christmas. She left. I locked the door behind her, added a chain lock, and then sat on my kitchen floor and shook for 20 minutes. But I didn't cry. I was done crying. The next week passed in a blur. I went to work, smiled at Chloe, watched her practice her stolen presentation. She'd gotten good at it, I had to admit. She delivered my insights with confidence, made my innovation sound accessible. In another life, we might have been a good team. But this wasn't that life. December 23rd arrived cold and clear. Snow had been forecast, the kind of picture-perfect Christmas weather that made everything look like a movie. I took extra care getting dressed that morning. Not in my usual costume of invisibility, but in something different. A simple black dress, professional, but not showy. I left my glasses at home, put in contacts, wore my hair down instead of in its usual knot. When I looked in the mirror, I saw my mother's face. The woman I'd been before grief and family and survival had taught me to hide. The party started at 7. I arrived at 6 to help set up as requested. The house in Westchester looked magical, covered in lights and garland. Tina had outdone herself, probably spending more of my mother's money on decorations. Chloe was in full queen mode, directing caterers and fussing over flower arrangements. She saw me and frowned. Why aren't you in the server's uniform I specifically requested? I am not a server tonight, I said quietly. I'm family, remember. Something in my tone made her pause. But then, my father called her name and she flitted away, too excited about her big moment to worry about me. Daniel arrived with the other guests. I watched from the kitchen as investors filled the living room accepting champagne and making small talk. Marcus Weinstein was there chatting casually with my father. Detective Chen was deep in conversation with one of our board members. Everything was in position. Dinner was elaborate. 7 courses, paired wines, the kind of ostentatious display that Tina loved. Chloe held court at the head of the table, my father beaming beside her. I sat at the far end, picking up my food, watching the clock. Dessert was served at 9:30. Tiramisu ironic for a night about layered deceptions. Chloe stood, clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. As you know, Northline Media has been working on something revolutionary. And tonight, I'm excited to give you a first look at Project Titan. Applause. Smiles. My father leaning over to whisper something proud to Tina. This was her moment. The culmination of everything she'd stolen. The lights dimmed. A screen lowered from the ceiling, some expensive installation Tina had probably paid for with money that should have been mine. Chloe clicked to the first slide. Her name in bold letters, Project Titan, Predictive Media Analytics by Chloe Moore. She launched into the presentation. I had to admit she'd memorized it well. She explained the algorithm, the market applications, the revenue potential. The investors leaned forward interested. This was exactly what they'd wanted to see. Then she got to slide 15, the technical specifications. The code architecture, the neural network, design, the proprietary innovations that made Titan actually work. I pulled out my phone, sent a single text message to Daniel sitting 3 seats away. Now. The screen flickered. Chloe frowned, clicked her remote. Nothing happened. She tried again, forcing a laugh. Technical difficulties, just give me a moment. Then the screen changed. Not to her next slide, but to something else entirely. Security camera footage. Date stamped December 15th, 2:47 a.m. A figure entering my apartment building, letting herself in with a key. The camera was grainy, but clear enough to identify Chloe's distinctive red coat, her profile as she looked around before entering my door. The next clip was clearer. My apartment's interior camera, the one I'd installed after the first theft attempt. Chloe at my desk opening my laptop, her face illuminated by the screen as she worked copying files, methodically deleting backups. The timestamp running in the corner, then the screen split. On one side, Chloe's presentation, the one she was giving tonight. On the other, my original file's date, stamped weeks earlier, identical in every way, except for the name in the corner. Where hers said Chloe Moore, mine said Elena Moore. The room was dead silent. Chloe's face went from confused to pale to red. What is this? This is some kind of mistake. Elena, what did you do? I stood up slowly. All eyes turned to me. I set down my napkin, walked to the front of the room. Chloe backed away as I approached. Daniel, I said calmly, would you like to tell everyone what else we found? Daniel stood, his face grim. He'd been in on this, helped me plan every detail. Now he opened his laptop, projected a new series of documents onto the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2 months, Northline Media has discovered significant financial irregularities. Consulting fees paid to Chloe Moore for services never rendered, company resources used for personal expenses, and most seriously, intellectual property theft. The screen showed transaction after transaction, fake invoices, forged client signatures, thousands of dollars funneled into Chloe's personal accounts. My father tried to stand. This is ridiculous. My daughter would never... Sit down, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm not done. I walked to. Chloe stood close enough that only she could hear my first words. You tried to erase me. You tried to take everything I built and pretend it was yours. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back? Then louder for the room. Project Titan is mine. Every line of code, every algorithm, every innovation you just presented. I created it over 18 months of work. I named it Titan because I wanted to build something that could hold up the world, something permanent, something that would finally prove I was worth something. I pulled out my phone, accessed the backup drive, projected my original files onto the screen, complete with creation dates, edit histories, everything that proved ownership. But what I learned is that I don't need to prove anything to people who've already decided I'm worthless. So instead, I'm going to show you exactly who's been stealing from whom. The next series of images made several people gasp. Bank documents, trust fund statements. My mother's will, clear and legally binding her life insurance and savings, were to be held in trust for me until age 25, then released for my education and future. Next to it, withdrawal records. Tina's forged signatures, each one slightly different from my mother's real signature, shown side by side for comparison. $473,000, I said, stolen over 5 years using forged documents, used to fund a lifestyle neither my stepmother nor my sister earned. My mother's money, meant to be my future, spent on designer handbags and luxury vacations. Tina was crying now, grabbing my father's arm. He looked shell-shocked, staring at the screen like he couldn't process what he was seeing. Marcus Weinstein stood up. Ms. Moore, Chloe Moore, that is, I'm here tonight in my capacity as legal counsel for Northline Media. You are hereby terminated from all consulting positions, effective immediately. Furthermore, we are pursuing both civil and criminal charges for theft of intellectual property fraud and embezzlement. Chloe found her voice. You can't do this. Daddy, don't let them do this. But Detective Chen was already standing, badge in hand. Chloe Moore, I need you to come with me. We have some questions about financial irregularities. What? No, this is insane. Elena, please. I'm your sister. We're family. I looked at her. Really looked at her. 27 years old, beautiful, charming, and completely hollow inside. She'd never worked for anything in her life, never built anything, never had to. "You're not my family," I said. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't try to erase each other. You're just someone I used to know who taught me a valuable lesson about trust." She tried to run, actually bolted for the door, but Detective Chen was faster, catching her by the arm. The room erupted in chaos. Investors' standing voices raised at my father, shouting that this was all a misunderstanding. But Marcus was already approaching Tina, documents in hand. "Mrs. Moore, we also need to discuss these bank records. Forgery is a federal crime." I watched it all unfold from the center of the room. People were staring at me now, seeing me clearly for the first time. Not the awkward sister in oversized sweaters, not the invisible worker bee in the background. Me, Elena Moore, the woman who'd built an empire while they tried to bury her. Daniel walked over, stood beside me. "Are you okay?" I nodded. Better than okay. Chloe was being led out in handcuffs, still screaming about injustice. Tina was arguing with Marcus' voice, shrill with panic. My father sat at the table, head in his hands, his perfect family Christmas dissolving around him. He looked up at me. "Eleanor, please, you have to stop this. She's your sister." I walked over to him, looked down at this man who'd raised me, who'd let his new wife abuse me, who'd stood by while I was erased. She stopped being my sister the moment she decided to destroy me. "You stopped being my father the day Mum died, and you let Tina move in like she'd never existed. This house..." I gestured around at the expensive decorations, the catered meal, all of it paid for with money that should have been mine. "This house was bought with Mum's insurance payout. It belongs to me. My lawyers will be in touch about the deed transfer." "You can't take our home. It was never your home. It was Mum's, and she left it to me. Everything, Dad. She left everything to me because she knew. She knew you'd let them destroy me if she didn't protect me from beyond the grave." I turned to the remaining guests, the investors and board members who'd watched this whole spectacle unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for the drama, but I wanted you to see the truth about who built Northline Media. It wasn't Chloe. It's never been Chloe. And from now on, my name will be where it belongs. On the door, on the contracts, on every project I create." Daniel raised his glass. "To Eleanor Moore, the true genius behind Northline Media, and my full partner in everything we build from here." A few people clapped. Others looked uncomfortable, embarrassed to have witnessed such a public dismantling. But they'd remember. They'd all remember that the quiet woman in the background was actually the one who'd built everything. I left my father's house that night and never went back. Let him figure out how to pack 20 years of life into boxes and find somewhere else to live. Let Tina face the consequences of her greed. Let Chloe learn what it's like to have everything taken away. I drove back to Brooklyn through snow that had started to fall soft and steady, covering the city in white. My phone rang 37 times. My father, relatives, people who'd ignored me for years, suddenly desperate to talk this out. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I went home, changed into comfortable clothes, made a cup of tea, and sat by my window watching the snow. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not happy, not yet, but light. Like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't even realised was there until it was gone. The next morning, Christmas Eve, I got a call from my lawyer. Chloe had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and theft. Tina was under investigation by the FBI for forgery and embezzlement. The house deed was being transferred to my name, along with what remained of my mother's trust fund, plus interest. "They're offering to sell," my lawyer said. "Return everything, public apology, no jail time if you drop the charges." "No, Elena, you would be within your rights to..." "No, they need to face consequences, real consequences, not just sorry and a handshake, prison time, piracy, public record, everything." "Are you sure they are still your family?" I thought about that, about what family meant, about my mother who'd tried to protect me, even in death, about Daniel who'd believed in me when no one else did, about the family I could build for myself based on respect and trust and actual love. They Stopped being my family when they decided to cannibalize me for parts. File the charges, all of them. The case went to trial in March. It was brutal. Public, messy, full of details I'd rather have kept private. But it was also necessary. Chloe got 18 months in federal prison for fraud. Tina got 3 years for forgery and embezzlement. My father wasn't charged with anything, but he lost everything anyway. His home, his standing in the community, his perfect life built on stolen money and stolen credit. He tried to reach out once through a cousin. Said he was sorry that he'd made mistakes that family should forgive. I sent back one message. You had 28 years to choose me. You never did. That door is closed. 1 year later, I'm standing in a new office in Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The company name on the wall, updated to reflect reality, Northline and more. My name in sleek chrome letters, permanent and real. Daniel walks in carrying 2 cups of coffee. We've moved beyond business partners into something closer to actual friends. He's one of the few people who knows the full story, who watched me burn down my old life to build something better. Board meeting in an hour, he says. You ready? I look at the presentation on my laptop. Project Titan launched 3 months ago to massive success. We're signing 2 more major contracts this week. Every piece of press mentions me by name. Elena Moore, the architect of predictive media analytics. The woman who built the future of content. I'm ready. That night, I post something on social media for the first time in months. Just a photo of the city skyline at sunset lights beginning to glow against the darkening sky. The caption is simple, they wanted me to be invisible. I chose to become inevitable. The post gets thousands of responses. Messages from people who've been overlooked, underestimated, erased by families who should have protected them. They tell me their stories. They thank me for fighting back. They ask how I found the courage. I write one response, pin it to the top. The courage didn't come from being strong. It came from being tired. Tired of being small so other people could feel big. Tired of building stages for people who couldn't construct a single nail themselves. Sometimes the only way out is through. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing their game and make them play yours. Sometimes I still think about that Christmas party, about the look on Chloe's face when she realised what I'd done, about my father sitting at that table watching his perfect family disintegrate, about Tina who thought she was so clever facing federal charges. I don't feel guilty. Maybe I should. Maybe a better person would feel some remorse, some sadness for the relationships I burned to ash. But I don't. They had chance after chance to treat me like a human being. They chose cruelty every time. So I chose survival. Here's what I learned. You can't negotiate with parasites. The only language they understand is consequences. I sleep better now. My work has my name. My success is mine. That's freedom. If you're living in someone else's shadow, know this, you're not trapped. The door was never locked. You just forgot you had the key. Mine was evidence and burning bridges. Yours might be saying no, walking away, admitting love shouldn't hurt this much. Whatever it is, do it. Do it scared, angry, tired, but do it. Because the alternative is being the supporting character forever. They'll call you selfish. They'll say family is everything. Don't listen. Real family celebrates you, doesn't cannibalize you. Everything else is just biology. Snow falls as I watch from my office 42 floors up. I'm not that woman who made herself small anymore. I'm what happened when she stopped apologizing, when she remembered she was brilliant, when she finally fought back. So, here's my question. Who are you making yourself small for? Hit like if this resonated. Subscribe for more stories about rebuilding after burning it down. Comment below and tell me, have you ever had to choose between family and yourself? Because sometimes the villain is just someone who survived. Sometimes the monster is a woman who refused to die quietly. Sometimes the bad guy just said enough. I said enough. Your turn.